Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendon Traxler.
It's that time again, everybody. It is the Colonize the Ocean podcast. My name is Adam Jewell. I am the social media manager for Atlantic Sea Colony and your most obese host of the Colonize the Ocean podcast. And with me is my good friend and the founder of Atlantic Sea Colony and kind of the founder of Colonize the Ocean podcast. His name is Brendon Traxler. Brendon, how you doing?
I'm good, but that's kind of odd intro. What kind of picture does that paint for people as well want to know?
Well, hopefully like a panoramic picture to get all of my obeseness into one picture.
Anyway.
I was really hoping I'd get something out of that. Wow. Okay. Hey, Brendon.
Yeah.
How's your toilet paper situation going on?
You know, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for asking.
So we're going to kind of allude into what this episode is going to be about. And some of you might be like us, some of you might not. We're going to tiptoe a little bit, but we're going to talk just a little bit about this coronavirus thing.
Well,
and a lot of you guys, okay. I'm sorry. Did the middle of my sentence interrupt the beginning of yours?
Well,
Brendon?
I think you need to preface the fact that this is a very topical content. So if somebody like a year from now is listening to this podcast, you're like, what are you talking about this for? So this is very, very topical for the time being.
Sorry, yeah, we're in the middle of March 2020 right now.
There we go.
If we need to, well, and it kind of goes back to what we said in the last episode, where we're going to try to be more current events with our topics, and we're kind of experimenting with the podcast. So now that you got that out of your system, we don't know where you guys stand. Our world is kind of divided right now when it comes to the coronavirus, whether we're just so annoyed and tired of hearing about it. There's people that are just like, okay, guys, just get over it. We're going to be fine, blah, blah, blah. And then there's other groups of people that's like, no, you got to take this super seriously. Everybody's going to die, blah, blah, blah. So, we don't want to get, in between your thoughts and all that. But, it did bring up a conversation between Brendon and I about how this would affect underwater colonization. How do we play a part in this? And a lot of you guys are thinking, like, that's kind of weird. Like, why would you be talking about that? But I kind of made a comment earlier on our Facebook page about, hey, if we lived underwater in isolation, or in our small groups, and, we're down there for extended periods of time, we wouldn't have to worry about the coronavirus.
As long as you're not letting a bunch of people come visit you.
Yeah, like if you're running an underwater hotel or something, which, would be in our plans in the future, yeah, that's a little bit different. But I'm talking about like the individual like houses and habitats that we'd build and put underwater. Really, like depending on how long you have supplies for and all that stuff, we could just be riding this thing out right now, Brendon.
That's very true. It'd be with a bunch of people being quarantined at home or quarantined or whatever, it's basically the same thing. But you got a beautiful view outside if you're going to do it.
Yeah. Like, say you did have to get quarantined. They're like, hey, man, you can't be around people. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go to my underwater habitat. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to stare at, like, sharks and dolphins and orcas. I don't know where your habitat's at. That's up to you, and that's a different topic altogether. But, yeah, in all seriousness, we did kind of mention that, one of the functions that a lot of people might not think about with underwater colonization, underwater habitation, or whatever you want to call it, is being able to isolate yourself in times of need, whether it's a global pandemic like we're facing now, or maybe there is some other like national or international emergency going on where you need to be isolated, you need to get away from civilization. That's what these another function that these things could serve.
Yeah, you look back, what was it, like 10 years ago when the big prepping movement was going on here in the United States? It's basically the same thing. You could have one of these as a prepper's paradise. It's where underwater where only you probably know where it's at. It's unless you can hold your breath or you got some scuba equipment, then you got to figure out how to get into the thing. So from that standpoint, that's a completely different subject than what we're talking about right now. But it all alludes to the same thing, that yes, it is a isolated, even your oxygen can and should be purified, cleaned through different scrubbing mechanisms. So your air would be clean as well. So yeah, it's ideal for a situation like this.
Yeah, and so my wife and I were talking yesterday or the day before about it, and she's or let me backtrack. So I've always been into like the prepping stuff. Like I've always been really interested in it. I've loved these whole doomsday prepper things. Granted, I don't have a bunker. I don't have a lot of preparation supplies or anything like that. But it's always been something like I've really been interested in. I've always wanted to do. Like I've wanted to turn my basement into like a fallout shelter or whatever. And she's always thought I was kind of weird for thinking that way, and that's pretty impractical. Well, yesterday she comes to me with a YouTube video. She's like, these people are talking about prepping. We should probably, think about this stuff in the future. And it kind of led to a mild argument because I'm like, I've been trying to tell you this stuff for a while, but I think it's one of those things where means I'm her husband, it's going to go in one ear and out the other, and she needs to hear it from someone else.
Yeah, I mean,
my wife, Brendon.
I'll talk to her. I'll tell her what's up.
But her argument against that was, well, sometimes I tell you things and you don't listen to me until Brendon tells you that. So you got roped into this argument, by the way.
Nice. Thanks for telling me right now. But anyway, before we even go with this now, I've lost train of thought. But yes, no, prepping's cool. And yeah, no, once again, there's multiple, trying to segue around this whole thing, but there are multiple uses for an underwater habitat, I think is what we're getting at here. But staying on topic of the coronavirus and just any sort of, virus infection, whatever.
We faced about 20 of them in the past 20 years.
Yeah. And once again, it's the same thing. You can say the same thing with space too. It's an isolated habitat in space, the International Space Station, stuff along those lines. The air is cleaned. It's nice. It's away from all human civilization. There's only one way in and out. It's either way you want to go, you're going to get away from the virus.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's one of those things that I guess it's another selling point for us when we want to talk about why you'd want to do this, because a lot of people are still, and I mean it's their right to not want to, but there's a lot of people that still think it's just kind of a crazy idea to want to go spend extended periods of time underneath the water in the ocean. I mean, this even extends to like kind of the seasteaders too. They're out in an isolated area too, and just kind of being away from civilization. So, but at the same time, that's how you stay protected from a lot of different things too.
Yeah, but the same thing. I think your wife was a prime example of that. I mean, it was one of those things that she didn't care about. It wasn't in her even peripheral vision at that point in time until it actually was an issue, and and she found a video that was the answer to the problem. And same thing until we start building underwater habitats, and so or space or seasteading, any of these things become available to the common man, it's not going to be a solution to the problem.
Right. And it's just kind of an introvert's paradise. I know you're more of an introverted person. You don't like being around large groups of people necessarily, and you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're antisocial, but you prefer to be amongst your immediate group of friends or family, and that's about it. So I mean, even if there's not anything serious going on, what better way to get away from people than to really get away from people?
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes to get away every once in a while anyway. And yes, small groups of two are my desired flock.
So like when you're hanging out with your dad and your sister and your nieces, like you're already like, this is too much.
Yeah, give me like half hour at the max. And I'm like, all right, I'm done.
One quick meal and then you're out.
Yep.
Anyways, back to the topic. But yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, like I said at the top of the episode, I don't know where a lot of people stand on this current pandemic of coronavirus, whether you're on the side of it's not that big a deal or it's the end of the world, whatever it is. Um, take it as seriously as you can. I mean, whether it's mild or deadly, I mean, you got to watch out for yourself, watch out for your neighbors and all that. Um, but I mean, involving underwater colonization with that too, this, I can't emphasize enough that this would be an alternative for a lot of people to be able to stay away from, viruses or whatever it is. And I kind of wanted to, I guess, ask you this question too, and maybe this is more of a big picture question. So with a lot of like diseases and stuff, there is sometimes the best way to build an immunity is to be around mild sickness, which builds up your immunity system. How would that work for people that want to live underwater and maybe are away from groups for long periods of times to where they might not be able to build up that immunity?
Yeah, it's something I've often thought about is what type of things will what I don't want to use the word evolve, but I guess it would be it'd be a sort of evolution in the human species as we start living underwater in space somewhere around that, especially the limit to sunlight, the limit to all the different pollens and everything else like that humanity has been used to and gravitated towards. What will that do? And I'm sure there have been some studies done on that because they have put people in isolation for periods of time. But when you start looking at generation and generation wise, I mean that's unknown right now, and I'll be curious to see what happens with that. As it starts to become mainstay.
Yeah, and with medicine always evolving and technology with that, I mean, vaccines and stuff are created all the time, and I'm sure within a certain period of time we're going to have a vaccine for this coronavirus thing. But so I mean that's one way to, I guess, have some immunity, but at the same time there's always the mild viruses that go around, whether it's like the stomach bug and just the cold. Sometimes just being around it more and getting sick a couple times helps you be more immune to it. And that's not to say, once again, that you know we're going to use the term colony, where there is going to be groups of people underwater. Yeah, there's going to be individual habitats, but there will be, probably larger structures as well that will have communities of people, which I don't want to say we want to introduce viruses or anything like that, but like if a person were to get sick, you're still around people and being able to still have that natural way of building up the immunity system. But also, there's always that um, way of developing artificial, I guess, habitats or environments to where, like you said, we could have the artificial UV rays that could give us that vitamin D and uh, have underwater, not underwater plants, but have types of foliage and plants inside these habitats to, help with just having that, I guess, natural, I guess,
Nature.
feel. Yeah, to get a sense of that. So, I mean, I foresee it being a hurdle, but I don't see it being um, a wall that's going to stop us or
No,
stop this from happening.
I agree, and I also think we're looking pretty far down the road here. You're looking 50 to 100 years for all this kind of stuff. I believe, but even at that point, it'd be similar to if you're going to another country right now, you have to get your inoculations before you can go to the other country. It'd be a similar prospect as, hey, I'm going to go to the land. I'm going to go to this area of the land, whether it's United States or Europe or wherever they're heading to. You need to get your inoculations before you go there to prevent you from getting any of the diseases and stuff along those lines too. So I think that's going to come into play. But once again, who knows? As science advances, we may be genetically conditioned to not get them at that point in time too when all this takes place. So
Right.
who knows when we're starting to talk 50 years down the road, just how quick technology and everything's advancing.
Yeah, and I mean that's another way of just kind of plugging this podcast too, is that we're trying to stay on top of the news that comes out about underwater architecture, underwater marine technology, And also we're keeping our eye on health advances that could relate to how we're gonna adapt and live in these isolated conditions. I mean, we always talk about how the astronauts and NASA learns a lot from underwater training and isolation, where I think in certain cases that could be reversed too, because we're kind of keeping an eye on how these astronauts that are spending up to a year um, on the International Space Station, how they adapt when they get back, what's changed with them. I mean, they always monitor their health when they get back because it's a new frontier. No one's supposed to, the human body wasn't programmed to be in space or underwater naturally. So it's all about how we can progress with that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head right there.
So we wanted to I should say I wanted to get a chance to try to incorporate this with what we're trying to do, and just get an extra episode out there. But no, in all seriousness, regardless of where you are with it, I guess my message to everybody, regardless, is just keep an eye on your neighbors. Help out the people around you, because right now, or right before we talked on the podcast, we were talking about how all like the stores and stuff are acting crazy because of availability of like sanitizer and toilet paper and all that. So it's
Yeah,
one of those
stop
things.
hoarding the toilet paper.
Yeah, quit being jerks. But check on your neighbors too. I mean, if you're one of those people that has enough toilet paper and enough hand sanitizer, go make sure that they got some too. I mean, that's one of the things to help prevent sickness is, it doesn't matter how many rolls of toilet paper you have and how much soap you have. If your neighbor doesn't have any, they're going to come to your door and cough on you, and it's not going to make a difference. So yeah, I guess that's my positive thought of this episode is just help out your friends and family and your neighbors and make sure they're doing all right. But try to keep like a 6-foot distance when you do it.
Yeah, I will second that thought. Same thing with water. I saw the shelves empty of water and stuff like that too. This isn't supposed to be a PSA by any point, but yeah, stop taking all the water too. No, but yeah, look out for everybody else. Be vigilant. Wash your hands. All that good
We
stuff.
did the economically or the environmentally friendly way and the economically friendly way instead of going out and buying like bottles of water. Because every time that we buy bottled water, it seems like we never drink it, and which is dumb. So like my wife has this like obsession with like buying water bottles, like these metallic ones, like the reusable canisters and all that. Like just like coffee mugs. It's water bottles and coffee mugs that she likes to collect. So like we took a bunch of these big her water jugs and just filled them up and put them in the fridge. So like instead of buying tons of water bottles or water, we have that instead. So not that I foresee there being a water shortage or clean water shortage, but I guess just in case that becomes a thing, we have a supply ready.
And from the being green aspect, you don't want to be having all those water bottles anyway because you're going to end up in the ocean.
Right. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. Think of the whales, jerks. Just fill up a jug. I shouldn't call our viewers jerks. Maybe they are people that bought a bunch of water. I'm sorry that I offended you, but seriously, think twice. Okay, Brendon, you got anything else you want to add to this one before we close it out?
Absolutely not. I think we've done enough damage for today. No, we're good. Once again, thanks for everybody for listening. This is a shorter one, but a timely one and an important one. And just want to get you thinking too.
Yep. Stay healthy, guys. And in the meantime, if you're in quarantine, why don't you do yourself a favor? Come over and check us out on our social media sites at Atlanta Sea Colony. Or you can check out our websites. We have atlantaseacolony.com. We also have colonizedtheocean.com. And as Brendon said before, we have a YouTube channel. You can check us out there. The podcast is available on the YouTube site as well. I know some people prefer that. Yeah, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. LBRY, I believe, is the new video site that you said that we're on as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct.
So yeah, and we're on Reddit. I keep saying that, and I'm trying to get Reddit going again. I've been trying to join other Reddit communities to try to get the Atlanta Sea Colony Reddit going. So you can find us in all those, and it'll all be in our show notes. But until next week or next episode, stay healthy, guys, and always remember that we love you. Bye.